So,
Now
Chris, you were
this is
married.
podcasting. What? Yours
It,
was better.
okay, you were married,
Hmm.
right? Did you do anything for your bachelor party?
Had a LAN party.
Okay, cool, cool. We kind of did too. We had an Xbox LAN party with Halo. And where else did we go, Matt?
Puerto Vallarta, Mexico,
No,
Mexico.
that's where I got married, but where we go for my bachelor party?
Oh, we went to medieval times.
Yeah, no
Medieval
one believes
time.
me when I say that.
What?
Yeah.
Why not?
I'm like, have you met me?
I was gonna say you look like a guy who got his bachelor party at medieval times.
Yeah,
That'd be a fun Twitter insult or something.
You might have even gotten a lap dance from the Green Knight, for all I know.
None of us had the cash to throw around to get a lap dance from one of those strapping specimens of manliness.
Hmm.
And I wouldn't have taken one from the Green Knight anyway. You know I'm a Red Knight man.
Now, you got to cheer for the Green Knight, or at least you used to, because the Green Knight was the bad guy, and because you have to cheer from whatever section you in, the fucking people who work there hate you if you cheer for the Green Knight. They fucking hate it. So every time we went, we would cheer for the Green Knight, and we would get dirty looks from everybody. And if you don't go to medieval times and cheer for the Green Knight, you're doing it wrong.
Well, when I eventually take my kids there, I will make sure we cheer for the Green Knight. Uh, I was remembering this the other day because I was remembering how we made a kid cry.
Oh my gosh.
Do you not remember that?
No,
There
no.
was like a kid sat in the row right in front of us, and we all like had our flagons, and every time the Red Knight would do anything, we'd bang them on the table and chant, "Blood, blood, blood."
Well, medieval times is not a place for children, so I don't know why you're bringing your kid there. They serve Diet Pepsi and with your chicken. So,
Yeah, I was talking to Sci-Fi Mark the other day, who had just been there over the holidays, and he's like, "They need to have an adults only night," and I'm like, "Yes, a
hmm.
100%. They need an adults only night at medieval times." I would
Never
drive to
been.
Dallas for that. Oh, Chris, I know what we're doing.
Partay.
Road trip to Dallas, medieval times.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we just played Alien versus Predator 2 on PC late into the night. Probably
Oh,
the Battlefield 1942 demo. No, that wasn't out yet. That was a whole
that
other LAN party where we just played that for like 12 hours.
that takes me back. I didn't have a computer that could run it at the time, but there was an internet cafe that had opened in Broderpool in Indianapolis, and I was always trying to get people to go to play Alien versus Predator,
So good.
amongst other
Ports time.
things. And Homeworld. Nobody would ever play Homeworld with me.
Oh, I'm so bad at that, but it's a great game.
Yep. Yep. There's an RPG of that now.
Of course.
It's a very tiny book. I think I got it like right over there. Um, and RPGs is what we do here on the Jaunty Mantis.
Praise RP Jesus.
Praise him. Yes, the Jaunty Mantis, a podcast of creative questions for curious gamers. I'm Jesse, one of your hosts, a guy who had his bachelor party at medieval times.
I'm Maddie, your other host, a guy who's been married multiple times and didn't have a bachelor party any of those times.
I'm Chris, another host, and I've never been to medieval times. Jesse will save me though,
I will, if RP Jesus can't.
if we can find him.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a lighthearted and silly, whimsical topic, death. And but before we do that, hey Chris, what have you been up to in RPGs?
Oh man, I rallied for the last time we recorded, and then fell sick. And when I began to recover, it was just nonstop sinus draining. So it's been about a week and a half. I've been under the weather with various fallout from that. So instead of whiskey, we've got airborne today.
Oh, so you played the Fallout RPG.
Feels like it.
Cool. Well, sorry you haven't been gaming, but glad you're feeling better.
What about you, Maddie?
Chris, I was inspired when I heard that you record your own games so that You can learn from them, right?
Yes.
I was inspired by that. And so when one of my players who wanted to take notes on my game, which I took as the ultimate compliment, if one of your players is like, "Hey guys, would you mind if I record the sessions because I am taking so many notes that I am missing the game," which is why I don't like to scribe and I don't like when other people scribe, but rather you be engaged and then us like kind of, you know, muddle through the I don't like recaps, but so when he offered to record it, I was like, I'm on board. Then I can do what Chris last name suggests on the Jaunty Mantis, and I can watch my recording, or I can watch the recording of my game. And gentlemen, I am fucking embarrassed at how I run games. It
Oh
was
man,
a it was a shocking thing to behold
a
because I
revelation.
thought I was doing things very good. And I'm not bad at this, but I would do things that I did things that I'm ashamed of
Oh
doing.
no.
Yes. One of my players said that he wanted his character to go outside. And I didn't ask him why. I didn't say, "What do you do when you get there?" I said, "Okay, you go outside," and then continued the course of the actions that I had, pre-programmed and prepped into my head to happen. I completely disregarded whatever it was that he wanted to do. So I never got to find out what he
Hmm.
wanted to do. Like, and I pride myself on asking a lot of leading questions and letting the players like really kind of make the space their own. I'm a huge believer in the writing room aspect of tabletop role playing games. But I done fucked up last time because I didn't listen enough. I didn't ask the right questions. I didn't leave enough space. I definitely should stop doing fucking voices. All the things. I was,
Oh,
with this campaign, this mini adventure, I wasn't going to do voices. And the first couple of sessions, I was able to make sure that that happened for the most part, although I relapsed a couple of times. But then the opportunity to record it and see what it was actually like was so tantalizing to me that I was like, I got to do voices this time and I got to record it and I got to see what happens when I do. And I have come to the conclusion that I should not be doing voices at all because, like I mentioned in our previous episode of the Jaunty Mantis, all of my NPCs sound extremely untrustworthy and unhinged. It's like, no wonder my players don't know what to do in some situations with my NPCs because they're like, is this guy gonna fucking stab me or is he trying to con me out of my gold or like, are we gonna like, so, I like that's the bad news. The good news is that if I'm good at anything, it's learning from my mistakes. Like I recently, a year ago, which is not recently, my wife and I decided to take tennis lessons. And I am terrible at tennis. I was the worst person in the class to the point where the instructor came up to me and said, "Hey, if you want to stop coming, I'll refund your money. And this, you don't have to come back if you
achievement
want."
unlocked.
And I was like, "No, no, I want to stick with this." To which he went, "Okay." And by the end of
Not,
that
but
fucking
why?
by the end of that multi-week period, I was the best person in our class. I was the most improved person. I went from like failing miserable to the point where I think people were looking at me like, what the fuck is this guy's problem? And at the end of it, I was doing everything correctly. I was getting compliments from the teacher. He congratulated me for for figuring it out. I learned very well from crashing and burning. That's
Yeah.
just how I learned. And I'm truly hashtag blessed to be married to somebody who is apparently not embarrassed at all by me flailing around like a crazy person on the tennis court and instead just thought it was funny. Uh, so yeah, anyway, that's what happened. Jesse can tell you what actually happened in the game. I was severely embarrassed by how the game went, and I ended that game session like fist pumping. I was like, I fucking killed it. I hit all my musical cues. I described everything. I built tension. I did a great session ender. Chris last name when Jesse would be so proud of me. But then I got the opportunity to watch it. I've watched it twice now. I'm going to watch it a third time. I have taken extensive amount of notes on what to fix. That's my gaming week, Jesse. Over to
Well,
you.
we have an interesting man on the street view because I'm a player in that game, and I also ended that session fist bumping and going hell yeah and being like you motherfucker, like in the most positive way, because coming off of our episode about how to stick the ending at the end of the campaign session. Maddie has this awesome narration about this, like the camera pans over the forest and goes into a cave, and there's two desiccated corpses, and one of them is obviously wearing the robe that we're looking for, and the other
Ah,
corpse is on top of it with a knife in their back. And the item we're looking for is the robe of the Sea Prince, which was the dummy answer on one or the which of these is not a magical item from the AD&D second edition trivia that we did at session 0 and is now what we're searching for in this alpine mountain valley, the robe of the Sea Prince. uh and then he just hits play and Mermaider by Metalocalypse starts playing, and then in the middle of the song he goes, well guys, enjoy the rest of your, and then cuts out, and it was perfect. It was beautiful. I was like, that dude, like he said, crash and burn or learns from mistakes, stuck the landing so hard. I was like legit sad on Monday that we could not talk about it because I was like, oh, he did such a good job.
Two opposite point of views from the same experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
One, I mean, I felt like that after the game ended. I thought that session went really, 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 really good. But then I was embarrassed at my behavior as a GM. It's like all the things we advise people to do on this show, and I wasn't really doing any of them. I was just kind
yeah.
of pushing it and pushing it and pushing it through.
Was the character who went outside me or John?
It was John's character.
Okay.
Your character also went outside,
But
but
you knew
I
exactly why I was going outside.
yeah, and so I just kind of let it happen. Another mistake I made is Patrick's character. It was trying to engage. So there's a noble lord of this town, and it's more of like a how we classically think of Anglo-Saxon noble lords. Like he's not like super rich and doesn't live in Downton Abbey or anything. He just has a bigger house than everybody. Like it's the main hall of the town. He's got a couple of guards. He has got the nicest stuff. That's basically it, right? And he's talking with the party, and Patrick's character made a comment about how he was dressed, and I just kind of cut it off because I didn't want to deal with it. Like I was just like, for context, his character is unnerving and annoying on purpose, and that's
Mhm.
my fault because in the resource document for this world that's not supposed to have a story, but it totally does now thanks to this robe of the Sea Prince. Uh, I took the idea of this one species in the Player's Handbook 2024 of the Ozmer or Azimur or whatever they're called, and I was like, it says here they could be 4 feet tall. What if they were 4 feet tall and they like got kicked out of the celestial heavens? And it's because they're really annoying and unnerving. And I created this list of
You're
ways you
wrecking
can
the
make
vibe.
your character, if you play them, could be annoying and unnerving. And Patrick ran with it, and he was like, "Let's call them Smurs." And I was like, "I love it. We'll call them Smurs." And so his character talks very softly and does these things that I find to be annoying.
I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you.
Yeah, there was a lot of
Or a
jokes in
picture.
session 0 about the ASMRs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The
Yes.
ASMRs.
That sounds like an amazing session, but I've definitely caught myself doing stuff in games that I'm like, I got to work on that. Or, to prove I can be oppositional to your two opposing points of views. I can oppose anything. I almost always towards the end of the game or in the game, I feel like I'm doing a bad job. Or right at the end or right after, I'm analyzing every mistake I noticed. And then later, usually a week later, when I go listen to the session, everybody's laughing and having a good time, and I'm entertained by her antics, and I'm like, oh, it was actually fine.
Mm.
Still, if I've caught myself, I'll listen sometimes and hear myself talk over someone, cut someone off occasionally. Although I like to think I've gotten better at it over the years. But yeah, not letting someone fall through on when they finally have, voice that they want to do something unprompted. It's like, oh no, I feel that so much. Missed an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I've been introducing several new things into this game. Tonight's topic will play into that as well. But so after our conversation about the negotiation system in Draw Steel, I was like, I want to do something more with the social pillar of D&D. And what would that look like in a way that works for me? Since negotiations and Draw Steel on paper don't work for me because we haven't actually played it. We haven't actually played it. So,
No one's
uh,
pointed that out too. Like no one's pointed out that we
You'll
haven't
eat that
actually
steak
paid.
someday.
Yeah.
That steak.
Someday someone will bring it up and I'll be like, oh no, but
But so that didn't work for me on paper. And I was like, well, what would work for me on paper? And so I just wrote something out really quick and we tried it out. And, I really liked it. I don't know if Jesse did. But there's two things I'm doing. I have three key NPCs. Each one of them offers something very valuable to the party. One of them is has outdoor skills and is a guide who understands the area and can help them find what they're looking for in the forest. The second one is a character that is knows everybody in the town and can find whatever you're looking for and can set up relationships. And it's like, oh, you should talk to this person. I'll go get them. And then the third person is like the arcane expert, good at puzzles, good at figuring out things and ancient lore and stuff like that. And I put each one of these characters on a clock system, popularized by Blades in the Dark. It's a social clock. So the way it works is in session zero, they interacted with each of these NPCs, and I said you have to build a strong relationship, a fair relationship, and a weak relationship, and you can only have one of each. And you have to choose which NPC based on how session zero wins. You have to choose which NPC has the relationship. So they chose the social NPC as the strong relationship. They chose the arcane knowledge NPC as the fair relationship, and they chose the scout as the weakest relationship. And the way it works is the strong one has an 8 clock, the fair one has a 6 clock, the weak one has a 4 clock. And then at various moments, the clocks advance, and each one of these NPCs is trying to do something in the story behind the scenes. And if the PCs do not help them meet that goal, they go and do something crazy or whatever that moves the story that usually doesn't benefit the player characters. You understand where I'm going here?
Sounds pretty cool.
So and part of that session zero was each NPC had an opportunity to then talk to the party about what it would be, what their needs are, so the party can decide whether or not they want to address their needs, which can extend their clocks, right? So since the scout has the weakest relationship, the scout has a friend that's in the drunk tank at the town jail, and they want them out of there. So if the party finds some way to get that person out of the jail, it will delay the progression of that clock by a certain number of sections. Anyway, that was my long-winded gaming week.
well, like the ring came to the least likely of people. I got some gaming advice from a source I normally wouldn't consider, and it led to a spiritual awakening at my Dragonlance game this week. That was like I came out of that session being like, this is the best session of D&D that I have run for this group in the 10 years I've played with them. I don't know if they would have that opinion, but I was like, this is great. And thankfully, I didn't record it, so I can't listen back and be like, oh my God, I'm a monster. I watched Ginny D did an interview with Deborah Ann Wall about how she makes people feel present at the table. And the thing I seized on from that video was basically skillful preposition use. of like placing everything you're describing in front of someone or to the right instead of to the west, to the east.
She is really good at that.
Yeah. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to do that. And it started with like, to your right in the distance, the beacon tower is lit as you're sailing back into the harbor of Calaman. And like, we just went from there. And I leaned into little scenes with the NPCs they had set up last time to reinforce their relationship. And I am normally incredibly adverse to doing a romance with it from an NPC to one of my PCs. It's just not a thing that like I tried once to do a romantic thing as a player with a demon in a game of Exalted, and I squicked out everybody at the table and was like, "Oh, I'm bad. I'll stop. I'm sorry." Um, but yeah, I did it, and this character had set a potential romantic, and we kept it pretty chaste and pretty sweet, and it was a really great scene. And then the success of that rolled into the scenes with everybody else. Uh, my wife's character revealed that with an 8-hour ritual, she can make half a mile of wheat crop bloom. Um, so they got the harvest in early in preparation for the siege. It was super cool. And then towards the end, I was like, okay, you guys also, if you need to stock up, we'll say you can buy magic items of up to this rarity. Here's the prices from DMG, D&D 5e 2024, now with magic item prices. And like they kind of like just had fun picking through the list with the 10,000 gold they've accumulated in the wastes and with nothing to do. And then we just put details on the magic items they bought. And like I realized the monk hadn't really got anything, so I wanted to give him a bracers of defense. But I was like, "Hey, what time of day are you taking a rest from like having monk climbed up buildings to nail boards over windows?" And they said, and so okay, it's that time of day. And then there was this whole scene where like the abbess of like the orphanage, the monks of the god Majir in Dragonlance often have orphanages, and that's why people have the last name Majir. If they're orphans raised there, they take Majir as a last name after the god as a sign of respect. So Marco Majir, the monk, is approached by the old abbess, the blind woman who's out there collecting alms for the orphans, and she like stabs him in the chest with her iron staff and says, "You, I've heard what you're doing." Uh, and then like gives him from the order these bracers of defense. And so I got to just fully improv this scene to make it feel personal and drop this cool magic item on him, and it was great. And now I'm gonna burn that fucking city down, and it's gonna be so fun.
Hell yeah. That's epic. I
So
love it.
yeah, yeah. If you get a chance, people out there, Mantis fans, look up the Jenny D talks to Deborah Ann Wool about making players present at the table. It was really great advice. I implemented it, and I'm so glad I did.
Wow. I'm gonna go check it out and then I'll see if I can remember to put a link to it in the show notes.
And the Jaunty Mantis says, kiss the homies on the lips. Romance is in.
There was a kiss on the cheek. I'm old and set in my ways.
I'm exaggerating. I usually keep it pretty tame, even when we do have relationships come up at my table, but as long as
You
everybody's
know,
having a good time.
in preparation for Why Does Maddie Hate Actual Plays podcast, I've been listening to actual plays to just, because it's like, it's been a long time since I've listened to them. So I'm like, let's just listen to them so that when this episode happens, I can be ready for it. And I have found one that I like called I Seduce the Dragon. And there's a lot of fun romance in that, which made me go, I am very jealous of this. Like, there are moments of this game where player characters have gone on dates with NPCs and each other. And I'm not saying I want to do that necessarily. I'm just very jealous of how well it works and how fun it is to like listen to. So by the time I'm done listening to this actual play, I may have to rescind my opinion on actual plays in general. But there is something to romance. I would love to cover it as a topic to see if we could get to the bottom of it. But there is something to it.
Only if we can call Chris last name our sexpert during the whole time because he's done the most romance.
I drove to this recording in my Nissan Sextera. I
Yeah,
need a hat, probably, like a
I know
pickup artist
there's
hat.
oh, I'm curious. What would that say? Uh, I know there's like a meme of like you get to flirt with your friends when you play D&D, and I'm like, why would you flirt with anyone that you haven't been married to for 20 years in July? What, I know. No, and then I'm like, I should get over myself. And it was so worth it. I'm glad I did.
It's true. I have the
Yep.
sand from your it's on one of these background shelves. It's in one of these cubbies. The sand from your wedding is back there.
Oh yeah.
Is that weird?
No, I have it in our house too. You know, we as part of our secular wedding ceremony, we mixed sand from the beach in Chicago where we lived at the time with red dirt from Oklahoma, which is where, you know, my wife is from, and the rich black earth of Indiana where I'm from, and sand from the beach on Puerto Vallarta. And John, the officiant who spoke Spanish, the wait staff asked him if we were witches at the restaurant where we had the wedding. And of course, he said yes. So
Hell yeah.
good
Yeah.
times.
That's a nice
Uh,
note end to the whole conversation, which started with bachelor parties.
hmm But all things, of course, in time die. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Death in role-playing games.
Hmm.
There's
Death and
probably
danger.
Mhm.
yeah, there's probably more to it than that, but that's all my brain will recover from the notes document at this point in time. What is our actual question?
The question is, I guess, how important is danger and death in TTRPGs or D&D? And this is my topic. It comes from the Arcane Library, because we talk a lot about Shadow Dark on this podcast. And I was like, you know what? I want to look more into Shadow Dark. I know Jesse's really into it. We reviewed it. I liked the book. It took me a while to get there, but I got there. I like it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the Arcane Library and look around and see more Shadow Dark things. I got to the Arcane articles section and just started poking around. And I came across, I'll link to it in the show notes, the importance of danger and death in your D&D game, which, you know, to keep in theme with this podcast, was written in March of 2021. So we're right on task with this one. And to summarize it, it's basically about how the author's main character during their game died gruesomely, due to a manticore bite, and it made the author feel very invested and alive as a result of it. And it's a short article about how a sense of danger and death is essential to creating exciting and memorable moments that players will talk about and enjoy. And I think this is like an interesting conversation to have because I think D&D 5e especially is very safe. I've always found it very difficult to kill my player characters in D&D 5e. The article brings up this idea of what's it called? Getting to six. The term of like we need to have six encounters to round out an adventure day, which is a brand new idea to me. I didn't know that,
Oh
because
man.
I let my player characters rest whenever they want, and all my encounters are at the deadly level.
It was
And I,
pretty explicit in fourth edition, a little less so in fifth, but still, I do not miss trying to hit that quota.
okay, so Chris, this is a holdover then. The getting to six is a holdover from
I
4e.
mean, I can't remember exactly how much they talk about that in fifth edition, but the idea is that there's going to be some fights and to deplete resources before the next long rest, right? And then, as your resources run low, things get more stressful. And maybe that makes sense in like a dungeon crawl situation where every room has like a, minor to medium threat and some rooms have a major threat. But like if your party's like going on an adventure, a long journey, like, or in town, like I just can't imagine getting into 4 or 5 fights every day.
Mm-hmm.
As someone that used to spar in my Taekwondo class, like one sparring session pretty much wipes you for the day.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this old fantasy series by one of my favorite authors by the name of Joel Rosenberg. The first book is called The Sleeping Dragon, and the main character is a martial arts enthusiast. And he makes this joke about how like the way he learned martial arts started with uh his sensei making them run a ridiculous amount every single day. Um, and they were like, Master, when are we going to actually get to fight people? And he's like, first you have to learn how to run away from your opponents. And he was like, why is that? And it's like, because if you ever get into a situation where a fight is about to happen, I want you to turn around and run away. If they're not going to chase you, it wasn't worth fighting about. If they do chase you, run them until they're out of breath and then turn around and beat the fucking shit out of them. And and like I think that speaks to what you're saying about how like there's only so many physical activities you can take as a part of any day, whether you're
Mhm.
fighting or not. I mean, like so, and keep in mind our characters are wearing armor, swinging weapons, marching all day, or riding horses all day, and sleeping out, in the wilderness. So the idea of six fights is kind of ridiculous to me. Do you guys think that D&D is super safe? Is that like have you found it exceptionally difficult to like really add an element of danger to the party?
My highest body count D&D 5e game, where I technically killed two PCs died. I won't say I killed them. One death was from a series of incredible bad rolls of slipping while standing in a stream in a cave and then going over an 80-foot waterfall and being rushed unconscious into a 2 mile long passageway. So, I mean, people thought it got real after that when that
Yeah.
happened. And then the other one is, like I said, okay, you can harvest some of the acid from the dead black dragon, but if you mess up on this roll, you're gonna take the full breath weapon attack as the acid sac bursts on you. Those are the consequences. Well, they rolled badly. And so, other than that, I feel like that was just a fluke. I will say I haven't played or run a ton of encounters in 2024 where I know they've done some tweaking to the CR. So it might be a little bit different, but from a 2014 perspective, I'd say I feel if the DM is designing with challenge rating in mind, that it's pretty safe.
Hmm. And it's that way for a reason.
Yeah, once you hit second level, it's pretty safe. First level, all bets are off.
Yeah. Yeah. Fifth edition, in my experience, except at the very lowest level, is uh, pretty survivable. Just hard to finish PCs off. Fourth edition, on the other hand, I think it's probably easier to kill your player than the player character. Don't ask me how I know. But man, that got so frustrating trying to challenge them, even trying to follow the encounter guidelines and everything. But it
Hmm.
also, those experiences plus reading various blogs about how to correct it, make it more fun and combat's less of a slog, maybe stop caring about balance. Like one of my favorite quotes, and I wish I could remember exactly where it came from, but it was, a balance encounter is a boring encounter. And I really took
Hmm.
that to heart. And now when we finally get to most fights, like any significant battle, the stakes are stupid, the battlefield's crowded, it's crazy, like, there's a lot going on and it's really important probably, because like why bother? Why are we going to waste, 1 to 4 hours doing half-assed tactical miniature combat, for some goblins that raided our camp or something, like that should be something we can resolve in like 45 minutes max. Like as
Hmm.
soon as the goblins are scared enough or you kill enough or, once enough of the players are out, guess what? Overwhelming force encounter's over. Let's move
It,
on.
it's so interesting too because so much of like old school gaming and BX has and Shadow Dark has that baked in with the morale check.
Hmm.
Like
Right.
first time somebody drops, the monsters make a morale check to see if they're going to stick around unless they're like mindless undead. When they get to half their numbers, they make another morale check. Like big monster loses half its hit points, morale check to see if it runs off. And that's like built in fifth edition. And I don't think fourth edition does that either. I don't think third edition did
I
that.
think part of the problem is that D&D iterates on itself and some things become baked into the player base and then aren't even put in the rules, right? So like, of course, any experienced DM of enough years and especially if early editions were explicit about it, know that you don't have to do a combat to the death. But then when you take that out of the rules and you just assume people to know it or to intuit it, man, I played a lot of those fourth edition fights right to the bone, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, plus the other thing too is, and it brings up in the article, the element of like being very aware of danger and avoiding potentially like uber lethal encounters or situations. Like I couldn't tell you the last time my player characters decided to run away from a fight. Like this is not going well. We should run away. It's like that option just doesn't exist for players in my games, even though I've said, I've tried to say it, I've tried to not say it. When I've said it, I've been like, you guys can run away if you want. And that seems to embolden them even more to stay in the fight because I suggested that they run away. And I'm not trying to be confrontational, but
Oh,
like,
don't worry. I'm gonna fix that the next time I get an arc to run games for Sunday.
oh, really?
Yeah,
How so? I'm
yeah.
curious.
I'm gonna run an Into the Odd like.
Okay.
And this okay, I completely spaced because it's been so long. This is another story, but from my RPG week, but relevant to the topic. On Saturday, I a while ago, my kids had made characters for Mouse Ritter. Are you guys familiar? Have you heard of Mouse Ritter?
Heard of
Hmm.
it.
It is an Into the Odd like where the characters are tiny little mice, and then it's basically an weird OSR world kind of on top of that, except they are mice. They are as small as mice. Everything is giant. Nothing is really scaled to them. And my kids made their characters, and we played, and they were offered 1,000 pips to go to this like abandoned human-made shack in the middle of the woods where there is a cursed sunflower. And if they could bring back 6 cursed sunflower seeds, they would be paid 1,000 pips by Rosemary the Mouse Wizard. So off they go. They find the place. I describe what they can see. To your left, there is a hollow log. Directly in front of you, there is a sunflower patch. One single sunflower with a black stalk and a black flower is much taller than the other and rises, out of it. You can see the faint specks silhouetted against the sun of bees, and then to the right is an overgrown garden. And then even further, if you turn your head, there is the huge shack. You can see some movement on the floor of what looks to be creatures your size. What do you do? Well, they go up to the flower because they're mission driven and, they make some rolls to climb it. So they climb it successfully. They successfully negotiate with the cursed bees that I had telegraphed that, they're not a threat. So the bees leave them alone. They start harvesting the sunflower seeds. Now, one of the things about running an Into the Odd like or an OSR is you need to telegraph danger because the game, danger and death are a huge part of this game. It is really unforgivingly lethal. So, of course, I was like, let's run my 7-year-old and my 9-year-old through it. They start getting cursed. And I had said there's this dark pollen floating around the flower head. It looks magical. It probably carries a curse. They go ahead for it. They're breathing in the pollen. My boy gets cursed and becomes bloated. My daughter gets cursed and her mouse becomes scabrous. So my daughter decides, fuck this noise. I'm going back down the stock. And my boy is staying up there still rolling saves to avoid the curse and trying to get the seeds. But here's the other cool thing about this game. Your character sheet has a grid for your inventory, and there's little cards you put on it.
Mhm.
Because inventory management is huge, he's only got 2 slots, and each seed is 1 slot. So he's like, I need you to come back and help me get the seeds. But she's like, whatever, I'm going to go explore this hollow log. So she goes in the hollow log, and I narrate, like I telegraph. As you approach the log, you smell the reeking stench of skunk, a predator of mice. What do you do? She's like, I go in. I'm like, okay. So the skunk comes out, snarls at her. It's big. It's, much bigger than her. Like its eye is the size of her whole torso. It's got yellowed teeth. It's slavering and drooling. It reeks. She's scared. What do you do? She's like, I fight it. I'm like, now I feel I need to tell you here that as one little mouse with a sewing needle as a sword, you pretty much cannot hurt this skunk. You would need a band of mice with siege equipment to take this thing out. What do you do? She's like, well, I'm going to run away. I'm like, okay, well, you're going to need to make a roll to see if you get away. She's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. And she calls up to her brother, like, can you help me? And he's up on top of the sunflower looking down on this situation, and he's got a longbow. And this moment coming up is the most proud I've ever been of my children. This is also why I have to tell this story. So it's like I shoot it with my bow. I'm like, again, tiny little arrow. I don't even know if you'll break the skin. Like, like he's like, I drag the arrow through the cursed pollen. And I'm just like, oh, my son.
That's awesome.
And he fires it down. You automatically hit in this game. So no damage is done, but I do apply a curse. So I roll on the curse table, and the curse I get is parchment skin. So I narrate how its skin becomes flaky and papery like parchment. And then my daughter's like, I light my torch and throw it in its mouth. My girl. And she does, and it runs off. And it was tough because if it hadn't gone through, like I was gonna be like, this is the monster, this is the dice. Well, your character is dead. Roll a new one. Like,
Hmm.
but it felt, I don't know if they felt the tension. They had fun, but running the game is, like for my kids, I felt the tension. I had fun because of that element of death and danger. And so
Hmm.
coming up, I want to do an Into the Odd like with the Sunday night crew to be like, you maybe might want to think about running away.
Hmm.
That's super cool. That threat too, and you telegraphing it well, like forced them to think beyond just, well, I've got a bow and I've got a sword, right? I love doing that to groups. Like, there's no way your regular text, what's on your character sheet, is likely not going to help. You're going to have to think outside the sheet for this one.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it's that element of death and danger that makes those encounters like exhilarating and exciting. Um,
To me, I'd even say it's the element of death and danger that pushes people into that outside the box
that's where I'm
thinking.
going with this. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, sorry that to cut you off then. Like, because you've got to minimize that risk. And as they say in the OSR, the answer's not on your character sheet.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, some of my best gaming experiences running games have been for, parties where, they didn't have all the resources of a standard 2024 5th edition D&D character and really had to get scrappy, and there was a huge element of danger as because of it. And then when they made it happen, high fives all around, and it just makes me look at, the way that we run 5e, and it's like I don't know if I know how to make it necessarily more deadly outside of like adopting extra rules, because I ran a more deadly game. Jesse, you were in this. It was the Lizard Man game, and it
Hmm.
started with a death funnel
Yeah.
system where it's like I made them roll for 5 characters, and then the characters, the lizard men were in a tribe that were doing a ritual that involved this like death race, and your characters could die. And some of the player characters, some of their lizard men died. Not enough of them died, you know? And I made a more dangerous campaign setting. I used 5e hardcore mode, from Runehammer Games. I used the limited resources rules in the back of the 2014 DMG, and the party still didn't have that hard of a time
Well, I will
with it.
say again, luckily we have a man on the street perspective from that game.
Hmm.
And I will say that that goblin fight early on with like the hillside with like the stone plinths with like the cans and ribbons and stuff tied on strings between them. Um, like where you were doing the monsters know what they're doing goblin tactics
Yeah.
with it. Like that fight is one of the most fun I've had in a D&D combat in the last like 5 years because the stakes felt very real. Like the moment the monsters started fighting smart, I was like, oh shit, he's doing it. Okay. But also too, and I think this is, I don't know if we need to discuss this right now, but before the end of the episode, we need to. I was trained into what a role playing game is in a climate and with mechanic systems where your character's death was on the table all the time, where you are not necessarily the epic hero, the books about you. You are just a person who is in a world and the world happens around you, and do something stupid, get wrecked. And so I sort of, I think in the back of my head, my like lizard brain playing the game instinct is to play like that is still true, whether it is or not.
Hmm.
And the thing, like people who have not come up in that environment maybe have different ideas. And Chris and I have argued about this over pipes and whiskeys before,
Ooh.
uh, because, like, his player base skews a little younger and have different expectations. And not to say they're wrong, but to me, I'm not sure. Well, okay. I feel like it's more fun when my character can die, whether
Mhm.
that's true or just an illusion I have.
Yeah, it can be. But, if people are really attached to their characters and their friends' characters and they're more interested in their journey together than just a random death because you fell down a cliff or something would really wreck their fun. And I'm not there for that. But also, death is just one of the stakes. And if you make that the only one or the primary one, I feel like you're missing out on a lot of what modern role play games have to offer. So while death may or may not be on the table, like depending on what kind of game you're playing or what kind of session it is, there could be very big stakes that have nothing to do with that. Like what if player character's critical relationship with an NPC is like at risk right now. They have two things pulling at them, and if they go to save the world, they lose this person or something. But if they stay with this person, then the big bad has a chance to push his goals along. Like any list of things, it might be the group's social standing in a situation. Like you might lose allies. I feel like those are too similar, but there's other things that could be at risk. What if it's the finances or their equipment that's at risk? What if it's I don't know. It could be a
Well,
loss
let's.
of
How do
capacity
we
for
do
one
that?
of the players losing a patron. I'm sorry, Maddie. You go ahead.
No, no, no. I sorry to interrupt, but how do you do that then? How do you make money and equipment at risk? How do you put their relationships at risk? How do you put their standing with their patron? How do you put that at the same risk? Like I know how to do that and I know how to make
Mm.
them risky, but how do you do that at an equal equivalency with death of a character?
We've talked a lot about getting players to care about NPCs or a particular city right before you raise it to the ground, and it's all the same stuff, right? Um, you got to throw a lot of stuff at them and see what they attach to, what they're interested in, and build those stakes a little bit at a time. Sometimes you can explicitly be like, "Hey, if this child doesn't make it to this city by this time, they're going to be eternally cursed to roam the nights as a werewolf, forever separated from Selune's grace. Like you have that much time before they're cursed. That's it. It's like, well, the kid will still be alive. He'll just be a werewolf forever. They just met this kid in this village, you know. Do they care about him? Well, it's a kid. Even if they're not gonna, it's not the same as their character dying. It's still like, well, I mean, nobody wants this kid to die. That would suck, right?
Yeah, I would say I
Or
would
not even
rather
die.
have
I'm
my
sorry, become a werewolf forever.
I would rather have my character die than have the GM take away my magic sword. Uh,
Yeah.
but that's me. I think that's but what Chris is mentioning, it's the other part of the question. And I think you and I, given our, like our general player bases and our old school like mindsets, like went right to death. But the first half of the question is right there, danger. The
Mhm.
danger has to feel real, whether it's a danger of losing something. It's a danger basically of a big change that you don't want to happen. And the great news is people generally don't like change. So like any change, huge change can be a danger to their characters, to their view of the world or the concept. And yeah, that's great. I actually did this I put this in for stakes, and my players reacted. This is my one mistake from the Dragonlance game. Like, we had just played this scene with Takar the Hawk, brave knight of Salamnia, and like Sylvian, the fair lass who had, caught his eye and who was low key into him as well. And so we had this scene where he's like, I don't know if I'm going to make it through this battle. And she grabs his hand and says, "Come with me." And everybody at the table's like, "Ooh." And she just led him up to the west wall to watch the sunset and, told him what the sunset meant to her and blah, blah, blah. So like, it
Did
was,
they hold hands?
they did hold hands.
Adorable.
It was great.
Love to see it.
It was great. And I was just like, Takar the Knight faces the biggest challenge of his life, a girl who's kind of into him. Like, but later they had a little scene where, as the siege is coming in, a soldier runs to get the party for help. This is written in the adventure. The basic overview of this scene. Comes and gets the party for help. He doesn't want to cause a scene or countermand a superior officer's order, but at the West Trade Gate, the officer in charge has closed the gate and is not letting refugees in. And so they go to deal with that and like, "What are you doing?" And he's just like, "Well, as you know, one of these breeds of dragon men can take the shape of those they kill," which is true. One of the Draconians, like their special power is if they murder somebody, they take their shape and then just, "I'm a normal human worm baby walking right in." And so to raise the stakes, I put Sylvian, the girl, on the other side of the gate. And they immediately got suspicious that a Draconian had killed her and it was a Draconian. And I'm like, I just did the love scene. I'm not going to do that.
You got to wait
So,
at least 3 sessions before you do something like that.
but also the deal they made when they came to this town was that the citizens of Vogler, that first town I've mentioned so many times where everybody was really nice to them, they got them barracks in the trade quarter outside the wall if they agreed to be esquires of Calaman. So now some of the Voglerites who they all have relationships with and care about are trapped outside the wall. And this guy is making a very real and very valid point that, like, I know this decision is terrible. I know this is awful, but for the safety of the greater good. And so that element of risk and danger, and then put imperiling the NPC, uh, and they figured out a way to do it. Like, my wife's character did detect magic and is scanning everyone for enchantments. And, they get the gate open and they make a persuasive argument. And, guys
That's
like,
really good.
"Fine, but if, we're attacked by saboteurs from inside, it's on your head." So now I can't wait to drop the saboteur angle, you know? Um, but yeah, I mean, that was a scene that I think that risk and danger was really present and telegraphed. I think the OSR advice is the key. You have to telegraph the danger.
Yeah.
You like a trap, right? In a dungeon. When it's just roll a perception check behind the screen, you don't see it. Okay, you trigger a trap, surprise, you take damage. That is way less interesting than you see a section of the floor panel that is scuffed and there is a blood stain on the wall next to it. That telegraph danger is something players can interact with.
Yeah. Plus, when you telegraph danger, especially in the trap example, you don't get the salty response of when the trap goes off and the player character's like, "I would have totally looked for that." And it's like, "But you haven't been looking for anything this entire time." I know, but I totally would have, taken the back of my sword and tapped at every fucking plate on the floor for 5 minutes.
Let me see your character sheet. Do you have a 10-foot pole? No? Get fucked.
That's why I
Yeah.
appreciate the addition of passive senses.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the reasons why I'm so interested in this, talking about this with you guys, is because, as I alluded to earlier in the episode, I have my three key NPCs on social clocks. And when their social clocks complete, they decide to take actions into their own hands to go after the things that matter most to them. They have needs that they have communicated to the party. And if the party cannot help them satisfy those goals or needs, they take actions into their own hands. And I don't want to reveal too much because Jesse is in that game, and because I know some of the people in the group, if not all of them, listen to the podcast. Things are not going to go well if the clock's complete for these NPCs. Like, things will happen in the town and it will affect the player characters. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so interested in this idea of, you know, danger without death or stakes without death being on the table, because I want to know how to really make that land at an equivalency of player character death.
Yeah, sorry, Chris, you looked like you were going to say something and I
No, you
jumped
go
in.
ahead.
I really think like and just mulling it over right now, I really think it's just the telegraphing. And that's
Hmm.
one of the reasons I think clocks are a great mechanism for running a game in an RPG is because a clock telegraphs a near-term threat, a danger, even if I don't know what it is. I know now that Shepard has 3 days before Shepard does something crazy.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, y'all want to do anything? I'm on a one-man quest for vengeance against acrobatic theater kid tieflings. Like I'm too occupied with that. But if one of the rest of you wants to, you know,
I
so
mean, it could happen sooner than 3 days. The advancement of the clocks are not necessarily based on days.
well, fuck. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh,
Like I wrote this to be able to be done in 3 sessions. Like if the party doesn't want to fuck around with the NPCs or the other elements of the quote unquote story and just go do the fucking, just go get the MacGuffin, you can totally do that. And then the consequences happen, and then we end by me telling you all the things that then happened at the end after you got the MacGuffin, you know, or died trying, essentially. It I tried to make this like a 3 to 5 session experience, but it's mainly just a minimum three because I think we're gonna go way past five,
yeah.
you know. And it's like, the whole style of it is like there are these things because the social element has always been a huge letdown in D&D for me. And I've been like, how do I bring the social pillar out more in D&D, you know? So I plan to do this in all of my adventures, depending on how this goes. Should I show the clocks? Like, I'm sure I can find something online that'll let me show the clock on screen by sharing it. Should I
Yeah.
put the clocks on screen and show the player characters where they are on the clocks?
Yeah. 100%.
Okay.
Yeah. That's when were you around when I did like the 2 session Blades in the Dark game?
Hmm.
Using I think it was back when I was still using Roll20 a lot and I actually had the clocks on screen.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
used those on Roll20.
I don't
I
like
bought a
roll
fancy
20.
clock pack. And
Same.
so everyone's always like, Jesse, your clock is so fancy. And I'm like, well,
It's
it was
huge.
time.
Yeah, telegraphing or just communicating, like you're kind of just explaining why they should care, you know. And you can't
Hmm.
make people care, but you can point them at, what the story, and if they're there to play the game, they're gonna at least make an effort to get on board, right? If you can, make the reasons to care cute, adorable, and funny, or something else, have big hit bonuses, if it's their sword you're threatening, then even better, right?
Hmm.
Hmm.
But then, of course, you have to let them know it's at risk. I was also thinking, like, modern D&D is a heroic fantasy, and heroic characters don't die easily, right?
Right.
That's pretty clear in the mechanics and the kind of stories that a lot of the adventures tell. Just having like resurrection as an option in the core
Hmm.
rules and worlds, but then also the characters. Bagel the cat has opinions on this topic. The characters are usually heroic as well, not always. And I often explicitly be like, hey, we're making heroic characters. So on some level, your character needs to have some hero in them. But then being the
Hmm.
hero, you're not necessarily, you're willing to die for the right reasons, right? Or so it's implied. So it's like, again, death can be an option and usually is on some level, but there should be so many other things, so many other stakes, so many things to care about to me. And I mean, if you're playing a campaign where it's explicitly combat oriented or adventure or exploration oriented, and the physical threat is a major portion of it, I got nothing against that. That's probably fun. I haven't done that in a long time, but
Hmm.
get, think about the story that y'all are telling and figure out what the stakes are, and then make them interesting, telegraph them.
Yeah. Yeah. I
threaten
mean,
everything they love.
your player characters aren't required the players aren't required to care about what you're doing, but you can't expect them to care unless you set the table for them and let them know everything that's going on for sure. You so I know Jesse runs his 5e encounters from pre-written adventures. Chris, do you do the same or are yours all created on your own or
Oh,
combination of the
both.
two?
Yeah, it depends on the game. Waterdeep Nights, my Thursday game. We're in Undermountain right now. Before that, we did uh, what is it? What's the city adventure?
Dragon Heist.
Dragon Heist. Thank you. Those muscle relaxers are really kicking in, you guys. But I use those and stuff from like DM's Guild for those adventures, and also random stuff from Reddit or whatever makes sense in that moment. Like if they run into some miscellaneous monsters in the hallway, if I have time, I'm going to read the monsters, know what they're doing, or look for the Matt Colville Reddit, look for action-oriented monster design stuff, or look for some third-party stat blocks and contrast and compare and make it interesting. And then in my Sunday game, the D&T House game, there were times like we were in Avernus, so I stole stuff from that book. But we were all over the plains in the latter half of the campaign. So I was stealing stuff from everywhere, just putting it together. I have an episode idea about leveling up your game, and there's some stuff I've seen other people do that I've tried to put into my encounters to just make the scale of them crazy, or the mechanics of them new and interesting, or the threats bizarre, just stuff to really kick it up a notch.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking is has to do with encounter level difficulty because I set all of my D&D encounters and I've been doing this in 2014 and I'm still doing it in 2024. All my D&D encounters are set at deadly level.
Yeah,
Like there's no easy encounters, there's no medium or hard encounters. They're all at deadly level and I still can't kill the player characters uh, I'm not trying to kill them, but I figure if it's at the deadly level and it's diminishing their resources, then something should happen at some point. And that's what initially led me to use after our review of Index Card RPG, the timers, the threats, timers, and treats. Awesome.
Oh, it
Awesome.
came.
got it
Fantastic.
yesterday.
You will not be disappointed. It's an amazing book.
I'm excited.
But that helps you really just get to the core of what your combat encounter is supposed to do so that they don't have to take a ton of time. They don't have to go all session. They don't have to be a slog. They can, and my combat encounters improve dramatically. Jesse can attest to this by me adding these timers and factors.
Yeah,
These are the things you need to. This is how these encounters can play. These are the ways that the encounters can play out, and they're still set to deadly. So it's
yeah.
like there's still an
But it's
element of
more
danger.
it's more interesting than a bunch of bags of hit points,
Totally.
seeing which ones hit zero first. Even just adding the morale, even if you're not doing it mechanically, doing it narratively, kind of keeping track of how the enemies would probably feel right now,
Yeah.
and then changing
Yeah.
their behavior, having them surrender or run, change
The
tactics.
the next fight in the Dragonlance game, it's and this will play before this comes out. And if not, oh, here's a preview, Jordan. Thank you for listening. Uh, is it's a death dragon, like that has a dagger with a note for the PCs pinned to its sternum that drops out of the sky off of the floating bastion of Takesis, and it just like wrecks the party. So basically, that's a giant hit point sponge fight that's gonna happen in a city street with NPCs, and I'm gonna
Right.
have its tail take down buildings. So like kids are screaming in there, and the flames of the cataclysm are boiling up onto this like food stand where the stall worker is cowering behind. So like you can just focus down it, but I'm gonna narrate NPCs dying around you if you
Right.
ignore
You'll have to
like
watch
the
innocent
threats.
people suffer as it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And it's not your fault they suffered, but you could
You
have done
didn't even
something
try to
about it.
save
You know, are you really heroes? I mean, so
Yeah, I have found that player characters get really cocky And um, I'm struggling with how to say this, but exactly. But I've also noticed this in the actual plays I've been listening to, where it's like the player characters get so used to in D&D not dying and not having an appropriate amount of danger per se. And I'm not saying that these games were run badly. I'm not saying that at all. The actual plays I listen to, great games, great players, amazing GMs. I'm taking notes. I'm learning a ton of stuff here. But I do notice this in my own players over the years, my own and in these actual plays, that D&D combat without death and dying and danger does seem to breed this element of like overconfidence and not entitlement, but cockiness
Yeah.
in the fight, so that when something does go horribly wrong, it's like, oh my God, it's like it's this swinging pendulum almost like except that the pendulum is stuck way to one side and then
It's like
comes
trying to
loose.
write for Superman, right?
Exactly.
He's invulnerable, he's super strong, he's fast, sometimes he's incredibly intelligent. So
But he's
how do
weak
you
to
make
magic.
those, yeah, the one thing that sometimes prompts, but how do you make those stories interesting, you know? And there's been a lot of different
Mhm.
ways. Threatening his life is a cop out to me, I think a lot of the time. Like,
Totally.
yeah, there's kryptonite, you can make him weak and killable, but like, you threaten the people you care about, place them too far apart, threaten the things he cares about.
Another
Yeah.
thing you can do too, which plays right into that, threaten the things they care about, is I read this article once about Exalted, which I think you guys know is like my favorite setting and like a huge section of that shelf right there. Uh, and it was like uh, D&D tries to be a game of consequences, and Exalted is a game of the consequences of success. And I think when you have a more heroic game, I think that's probably a good thing to lean into. It's just like,
Mhm.
yeah, you defeat the dragon. What was the dragon holding back? What moves in now that the dragon's gone? Like your actions as heroes open the playing field for other things and create consequences of
Yeah.
your success. So
Well, the D&T house party, the Order of Camellia was the adventuring group, which is the tea plant. They saved Westgate from the Zentarum taking over and were rewarded a manor house with a ruined keep on a hill overlooking it. And then they were obligated to take care of those people that lived there. And then as the Zentarum and other people's plans progressed, there was food shortages and other things. So pretty soon they're taking on refugees and they're really worried about the crops and, the cold and everything else. Trying to, we got to build more shelters. Like it gave them stuff to care about and stakes outside of just them dying for sure.
But again, I think the way you described that, it's so great. But what you had to do with all those is telegraph, telegraph,
Yeah.
telegraph. And I have one other thought about telegraphing with random encounters. That is also something from those OSR-like games, is like random encounter rules, like this many turns make a random encounter check, or this many, watches of a day and travel make an encounter check. Then sneeze. But one of the things I really like about the table is it's a d6 roll. On a one, you have a random encounter. And that doesn't necessarily mean hostile monsters, because there's a reaction table. If you don't know what their reaction is going to be, you roll that to just see what it's going to be. But two is, if you get a two, you present an omen of the encounter.
Hmm.
And I saw that work when I was playing Mouse Ritter with my kids, where like I rolled, it was like three turns in, I rolled for an encounter, I got a two, and I'm just like, you hear the buzzing from the sunflower intensify, like telegraph. There we go. And the dice told me to do it. I'm like, that's a cool idea.
That's really cool.
I will say too, because we started with saying you got this from a Shadow Dark forum. Shadow Dark, my work on lunch hour game, is the highest body count I ever racked up running
Hmm.
games because people just die all the time. And it was fun. They had a good time. They'd roll a new character and come right back in.
Yeah.
But we
That's
did, of course, telegraph
that's
that was on
explicit
the
going
table.
into the game, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Death is going to happen a lot. Get used to it.
Yeah. Well,
Let-
cool. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was going to say, I've listened to Mike Shea talk about the Shadow Dark campaign he was running, or may still be running quite a bit, and new characters just popping into the flow of the adventure constantly. Sounds pretty exciting.
Hmm.
Great. Matt, you got anything else?
No, no. As per usual, gentlemen, I've really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. I'm definitely going to be showing those clocks, and I can't wait for at least one of them to get filled.
Rock out with your clock out and then get filled on the Jaunty Mantis. We have been the Jaunty Mantis, a podcast of creative questions for curious gamers. If you have a creative way to telegraph danger or add that sense of peril to RPGs, we'd love to hear about it. Send us an email at jauntymantis@gmail.com or reach out to us on Threads or Blue Sky at Jaunty Mantis. And until next time, get out there and play those fucking role playing games.
Kryptonite is for vacation.